Have you ever stopped to wonder why, despite achieving everything the American dream promises, a good job, a nice house, a car in the driveway, and a stable family, so many still feel trapped, restless, and unsatisfied? This feeling is not a mere coincidence or personal failure. It is the consequence of a grand illusion, a beautifully crafted narrative that ensnares the mind and spirit under the guise of freedom and opportunity. The American dream, for all its glitter and promise, is in fact a cage dressed in gold, a system designed not to free you, but to keep you running on a wheel, chasing an ever-moving goalpost. This dream has been sold to us as the ultimate freedom, the freedom to choose, the freedom to rise, the freedom to create the life we want. Yet, when you peel back the layers, what you find is a world where your choices are pre-shaped, your desires programmed, and your ambitions funneled into a narrow corridor of socially accepted success. The house, the car, the career ladder, these are not just goals, they are the bars of this cage. You work harder, longer, sacrifice your time and peace to attain them, but once you reach them, the dream shifts again, whispering that true contentment lies just one rung higher, one more acquisition away. This is not a conspiracy theory, but a cold, strategic design. The system understands that a restless, always aspiring population is easier to manage than one that questions, rebels, or seeks meaning beyond material accumulation. By defining success solely through economic terms, the size of your paycheck, the square footage of your home, the brands you wear, it confines your mind to a predictable pattern, conditioning you to equate worth with wealth. This psychological entrapment keeps you compliant, tethered to jobs you don't love, debts you can't escape, and social expectations that feel suffocating. In the name of the dream, you become a prisoner of your own ambition. Yet, the cage isn't made only of external forces. The most powerful bars are the ones you build within your own mind. The story you tell yourself about what life should be, what success means, and what will finally bring you peace. These narratives shape your identity and limit your vision. Breaking free requires more than just financial independence or physical escape. It demands a profound shift in how you perceive yourself and your place in the world. It requires courage to reject inherited definitions of success and to ask deeply uncomfortable questions. What if the American dream is not my dream? What if the life I truly want is not the life everyone says I should want? This is where true freedom begins, not in accumulation or approval, but in clarity and choice. To step outside the golden cage, you must reclaim your mental sovereignty, reclaim your ability to decide what matters most. Freedom is not about escaping responsibility or ambition, but about aligning your desires with your authentic self rather than with societal scripts. It means finding joy in simplicity, meaning beyond consumption, and peace beyond approval. When you begin to rewrite your story, you dismantle the cage from within, and suddenly, the walls that once seemed immovable start to dissolve. Understand this: the American dream as it stands today is not a path to liberation, but a mechanism of control. It promises happiness while delivering restlessness. It sells freedom while delivering conformity, but you are not condemned to remain its prisoner. The power to break free lies within your ability to recognize the illusion, question the narrative, and redefine success on your own terms. This is the revolution of the mind and spirit, the only revolution that can truly set you free. And so, the pursuit must shift from chasing external symbols to mastering internal truth. You must see that your value is not measured by your possessions or your status, but by your integrity, your wisdom, and your capacity to create meaning in a world designed to distract you from yourself. The cage loses its hold when you stop feeding it with your fear, your need for approval, and your relentless desire to conform. Instead, you begin to cultivate a life defined by deliberate choices, deep connections, and a fierce commitment to authenticity. This shift is not easy, because it means confronting uncomfortable realities about the society we live in and the roles we play within it. It means dismantling illusions we have cherished since childhood and facing the uncertainty that comes with stepping into the unknown. But with every step you take away from the imposed dream, you step closer to a reality shaped by your own vision, your own values, and your own freedom. The cage looks beautiful because it promises everything: security, success, acceptance, but it is a cage nonetheless. True freedom is found beyond its gilded walls, in the courage to live on your own terms, to embrace uncertainty, and to build a life worth living by your own definition. This is not just a call to rebellion, but an invitation to awaken. An awakening to the power of choice, the necessity of self-awareness, and the possibility of a life that transcends the limits of the so-called dream. When you stop chasing what society tells you to want and start chasing what you truly need, the cage begins to crack, and the horizon of genuine freedom unfolds before you, vast, uncertain, but unmistakably yours. Have you ever truly examined the nature of the American dream, that radiant vision of freedom, prosperity, and limitless possibility that has been passed down through generations? At first glance, it dazzles with promise, the idea that through hard work and determination, anyone can rise from humble beginnings to achieve greatness, to build a comfortable life filled with abundance and security. Yet, beneath this glowing surface lies a far more complex and ultimately more troubling reality. The American dream is not merely a set of aspirations. It is a carefully constructed illusion that seduces the mind into believing it is free, when in truth it is caught within an invisible cage. This cage is fashioned not from iron bars or physical chains, but from desires, expectations, and promises that confine rather than liberate. It is a prison of ambition disguised as opportunity, where the pursuit itself becomes the trap. The allure of the American dream rests on its brilliance as a narrative, a story so compelling that it shapes identity and drives behavior on a massive scale. It tells you that success is within your grasp if only you strive hard enough, that your worth is measured by your ability to accumulate wealth, own a home, secure a stable job, and provide for your family. This narrative offers a powerful promise: freedom through achievement. But freedom in this context is deceptive. It is not freedom to define your own values or to choose your own path, but freedom only within a tightly controlled framework. You are free to compete, to consume, to climb the social ladder, but only as far as the system allows. The American dream becomes a gilded cage because the very things it promises: success, security, happiness are defined narrowly and externally, shaping your desires and actions to fit its design. The cage takes form through a constant cycle of aspiration and dissatisfaction. The system fuels a restless hunger by defining goals that shift as soon as they are reached. A modest home is celebrated as the pinnacle of achievement, but once attained, the dream evolves: now you need a bigger house in a better neighborhood. A steady job is praised, but soon you are told to seek a higher salary, a more prestigious title, or greater consumption. This endless escalation ensures that the pursuit never truly ends. It keeps you striving, sacrificing your time, energy, and mental peace to chase a moving target that remains just out of reach. The cage is not about locking you in physically, but about trapping you in a mindset of constant want and never enough. At the heart of this cycle is the illusion of choice. The American dream promotes the idea that you are the master of your fate, the captain of your soul, empowered by personal effort and merit. Yet, the choices available are carefully curated by social, economic, and cultural forces that shape what is possible or desirable. From the moment you are born, you are immersed in messages that condition your mind: what success looks like, what you should value, what will bring you happiness. These messages do not come from some neutral source, but from powerful institutions invested in maintaining the status quo. Advertising, education, media, and political rhetoric all converge to reinforce a singular vision of the good life, one tied to material achievement and social conformity. Your freedom to choose is real only within this narrow range of options, creating a subtle but powerful confinement. This confinement extends beyond material conditions into the psychological and emotional realm. The American dream exploits a fundamental human desire for significance and belonging, promising that these can be achieved through external markers of success. But as people chase these markers, they often find themselves more isolated, anxious, and empty. The pressure to conform, to keep up appearances, and to measure up to societal standards breeds stress and alienation. The dream's cage is not just about what you do, but about how you feel. It controls your sense of self, worth, and belonging, tying them to achievement rather than to authentic identity. This creates a fragile self that depends on external validation, perpetuating the cycle of striving and dissatisfaction. The American dream obscures the reality of inequality and systemic barriers that make true freedom unattainable for many. It promotes the myth that anyone can succeed if they try hard enough, masking the structural factors like economic disparity, racial injustice, and unequal access to education that constrain opportunity. This myth becomes a tool of control, shifting blame onto individuals for their struggles rather than acknowledging the limitations imposed by the system. The cage thus not only restricts the mind, but also justifies exclusion and inequality, making it harder for those trapped inside to see the walls around them. In essence, the American dream's greatest deception is convincing you that your pursuit of it is the pathway to freedom. But this pursuit, far from liberating, often becomes the very thing that confines you. The cage is beautiful because it dresses itself in hope, ambition, and the language of freedom, blinding you to the cost of the chase. It is a gilded labyrinth where every step forward feels like progress, but only leads deeper into confinement. Recognizing this truth is the first step toward liberation, understanding that what you have been chasing may not be freedom at all, but a carefully crafted illusion designed to keep you running in place. True freedom, then, must come from breaking this cycle of illusion and desire. It demands seeing beyond the dream's surface and reclaiming control over what defines your life. Until this awakening, the American dream remains not a door to liberation but a beautiful cage, enticing and entrapping millions in its gleaming, yet imprisoning embrace. The American dream's power to captivate lies not only in its promise, but in the invisible structures that shape and contain its structures embedded deep within society, the economy, and culture that act like the walls and locks of the cage. These systems do not simply exist alongside the dream. They actively craft and control it, molding desires and behaviors to serve the interests of those who benefit from the status quo. Far from a neutral backdrop, these forces subtly, yet relentlessly, confine individuals by defining what is possible, acceptable, and desirable, ensuring that the pursuit of the dream remains a form of containment rather than liberation. Economic structures are the most visible architects of this cage. The capitalist system, on which the American dream is built, demands continuous growth, consumption, and competition. It rewards those who play by its rules, working long hours, acquiring property, accumulating wealth while penalizing those who deviate or fall behind. Jobs are rarely designed to foster creativity or fulfillment. Rather, they are mechanisms to extract productivity and maintain consumer demand. The pressure to keep earning and spending fuels a cycle where satisfaction is fleeting because the economy depends on your ongoing participation as a consumer. This cycle enforces conformity by making it costly to resist or opt out. Financial obligations like mortgages, car payments, and student loans become invisible chains, binding you to a lifestyle that prioritizes material gain over personal freedom. The structures of debt and credit ensure that the American dream is not a simple path to success, but a continuous treadmill where stopping means risking loss and failure. Beyond the economic, cultural forces also play a pivotal role in shaping and limiting the dream. From childhood, individuals are socialized into specific narratives about what constitutes a good life. Education systems, media, and popular culture reinforce ideals that revolve around consumption, competition, and status. These messages teach people not only what to want, but how to feel about themselves in relation to those wants. Happiness is equated with acquisition. Respect is tied to visible success. This cultural programming restricts imagination, narrowing the scope of what people consider possible or worthwhile. It instills a collective mindset where deviation from the prescribed path is seen as risky or even irresponsible. To choose differently is to risk social alienation, self-doubt, and failure in the eyes of the community. In this way, culture acts as both jailer and warden, policing desires and enforcing conformity through social approval and rejection. Political structures intertwine with these economic and cultural forces to further entrench the cage. Policies and laws often maintain economic inequality, favor certain industries, and promote consumer-driven growth as a national priority. The political rhetoric around the American dream emphasizes individual responsibility while downplaying systemic issues, encouraging citizens to see success or failure as personal rather than collective. This focus on individual effort obscures the ways institutions limit opportunity and reinforce social stratification. By framing the dream as attainable through merit alone, political structures shift attention away from the barriers that exist, barriers like unequal education, healthcare disparities, and structural racism. This framing keeps many chasing a dream that is systematically out of reach, perpetuating frustration and disillusionment, while preserving the system that benefits from this illusion. This intricate web of economic, cultural, and political structures shapes not only external behavior, but internal experience as well. The desires and ambitions that appear to be personal choices are, in fact, deeply influenced by forces beyond individual control. The system programs the mind to equate security with accumulation and identity with social status. It creates a psychological dependency on external validation through material success, making it difficult to question or reject the dream without experiencing anxiety, guilt, or shame. The cycle of striving becomes a psychological trap. The more you pursue the dream, the more your sense of self becomes tied to achievements and possessions, and the less able you are to envision alternatives. This conditioning limits critical thinking and creativity by fostering a narrow world view focused on competition and consumption. It discourages questioning the system or imagining different ways of living. This is a key element of the cage's strength. It not only confines actions but restricts imagination. When people are unable to conceive of life beyond the prescribed dream, they remain trapped, even if the dream causes them pain or dissatisfaction. The cage becomes invisible precisely because it is embedded in the very desires and values people hold most dear. Yet, understanding this dynamic reveals that the American dream is not merely an individual struggle, but a collective condition engineered and maintained by systems that resist change. Breaking free requires recognizing how these forces shape you and consciously choosing to disengage from their grip. It means questioning the goals, values, and narratives imposed by the system, and cultivating a mindset that prioritizes autonomy, meaning, and well-being over conformity and consumption. To dismantle this cage, individuals must cultivate awareness of how their desires have been shaped and reclaim the power to define what success and happiness mean for themselves. This involves developing the courage to resist cultural and economic pressures, to refuse the unending race for more, and to find fulfillment in authenticity rather than approval. It also demands a broader societal awakening to the systemic nature of the dream's confinement, encouraging reforms that promote genuine opportunity and well-being beyond material wealth. The structures that confine the American dream are not unbreakable, but they require conscious effort to see, understand, and resist. Until then, the dream remains a beautiful cage, one that dazzles with hope but restricts freedom, shaping lives in patterns that serve the system rather than the individual. Recognizing this is the key to reclaiming true freedom and living a life of intentional choice rather than unconscious conformity. True freedom is rarely found in the pursuit of external markers or societal approval. Instead, it begins with an internal revolution, a breaking of mental and emotional chains that have long bound the individual to inherited narratives and illusions. To genuinely break free from the cage of the American dream, one must first understand that freedom is not simply about circumstances or possessions, but about the clarity and sovereignty of the mind. It demands a radical re-examination of the stories we tell ourselves about what life should be, what success truly means, and where lasting happiness is found. This shift requires deep psychological courage because it confronts the comfort of familiar beliefs and the fear of uncertainty. Most people grow up absorbing collective myths about achievement, security, and happiness, often without questioning their origins or validity. These myths become mental prisons that limit vision and choice, causing individuals to chase goals that may never satisfy or align with their authentic selves. The notion that success equals wealth, status, and material accumulation is a prime example of such a limiting narrative. It is a story so deeply ingrained that questioning it can feel like risking everything: identity, community, and perceived stability. Yet, breaking this mental conditioning is the cornerstone of true liberation. Freedom begins when you realize that these narratives are not universal truths, but social constructs that can be reshaped or discarded. Reclaiming freedom thus involves a process of conscious self-awareness and questioning. It requires the willingness to pause and ask difficult questions. What do I really want? What values and goals are truly mine and which have been imposed on me? Am I living according to my own definition of fulfillment, or merely following a script written by others? This process is often uncomfortable because it disrupts long-held beliefs and forces confrontation with uncertainty, but it is also deeply empowering as it opens the door to self-authorship and intentional living. When you begin to see your desires as choices rather than mandates, you reclaim the agency to shape your life deliberately rather than reactively. Emotional detachment from societal expectations is a vital part of this inner freedom. The cage of the American dream often relies on emotional levers: fear of failure, need for approval, anxiety about status, that keep people trapped in cycles of striving and comparison. Letting go of these emotional dependencies requires cultivating inner strength and resilience, learning to find worth and validation from within rather than from external markers. It means embracing uncertainty and imperfection as natural parts of life, rather than threats to your identity. This emotional independence dissolves the power that societal pressures hold over you, making it possible to choose paths that align with your authentic self, even if they deviate from the mainstream dream. The transformation toward true freedom also involves redefining what success means on a personal level. Rather than equating success with accumulation or appearance, it becomes about alignment, living a life consistent with one's core values, passions, and sense of purpose. This might mean prioritizing relationships over wealth, creativity over conformity, or peace over recognition. Such a redefinition often runs counter to dominant cultural narratives, making it a revolutionary act. Yet it is precisely this act of redefining that breaks the cage's hold, for the bars of the cage are made of expectations and comparisons. When you reject those, the cage loses its grip. This redefinition is not a rejection of ambition or responsibility, but a realignment of these energies toward authentic goals. Ambition becomes a tool for self-expression and growth rather than a mechanism of social validation. Responsibility is no longer about meeting imposed standards, but about honoring one's commitments to oneself and one's deeper purpose. This shift transforms the pursuit from one of external approval to one of internal fulfillment, which is inherently liberating and sustainable. In addition, cultivating a broader perspective on happiness and well-being is crucial. The cage of the American dream narrows the focus to material success and individual achievement, often neglecting the deeper human needs for connection, meaning, and contribution. True freedom includes the realization that happiness is not found in isolation or consumption, but in authentic relationships, creative engagement, and a sense of belonging to something larger than oneself. Expanding the definition of well-being beyond the self disrupts the individualistic trap that the dream often imposes and opens new possibilities for a richer, more connected life. Breaking free from the mental and emotional chains requires ongoing effort and reflection. It is not a one-time event, but a lifelong process of awareness, questioning, and choice. The narratives that confine us are deeply rooted and reinforced by society, making them difficult to escape completely. Yet every step taken toward clarity and authenticity chips away at the caged walls, expanding the space of true freedom. This journey invites you to become the author of your own story, to craft a life that resonates with your unique truth rather than a borrowed ideal. True freedom is found in the sovereignty of the mind and heart, the ability to choose your values, define your success, and pursue fulfillment on your own terms. It is a freedom that no external structure can take away because it arises from within. When you reclaim this freedom, the American dream ceases to be a cage and becomes instead a starting point for living a life of intentional meaning and authentic joy.